Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Todd Digby. I am the chair of the Library Technology Department at the University of Florida Libraries, and I'm glad I was able to keep at least some of the warmer weather up here as I came yesterday. It's a role that I've been with since 2016, but I've been in library technologies for a lot of years, and that actually got me thinking as I was just even coming up here yesterday that it's 2024, and I remember back 30 years ago in 1994, just this time of year, I was in my first semester of my MLIS program back at the University of Alberta, and I remember being shown a beta version of Mosaic. Everything was just text-based, prompts, but then all of a sudden we got this Mosaic, which was really one of the, my first experience with that visual World Wide Web. And just thinking about how many things have changed in the last 30 years. We've had multiple generations of library technologies, especially ILSs. I've been thinking, how many have I actually gone through? I think I've worked with 5 different systems, from DRA to Notice to Voyager to Aleph to Alma. These constant churns of library technology, and also we've had multiple generations of other library technologies, different IRs, digital libraries, you name it, ILL systems. We've had multiple ones, and we keep updating and maintaining these. But I think what I was really spinning in my brain is that we also like to customize things. We also like to make it unique for our own work processes, our own institutions. And in doing so, we've sort of put ourselves in a bit of a corner, in that we built up a lot of technical debt, and these systems don't get upgraded as often as they could, are hard to migrate and keep functionality going. And I think that's some of the story that I'm going to tell today I better get going because I'm going to run out of time just on the introduction. Okay, so was this a mistake or not? I don't know if I'm going to get you an answer. This is a picture of the old University of Florida digital collection system. It was, like most big research institutions, and for those that don't know, University of Florida, we have approximately 60,000 students. We're a big institution. The libraries have over 250 staff members. We've been digitizing probably since the 1990s. But this system was officially launched around 2006. This old University of Florida digital collections, it was a homegrown system. It was developed by a single developer who had some library expertise, but also started to learn to code. And it was open source, called SobXCM. You can actually still go and download it, install it. Open source, sort of. It runs on a Microsoft platform. So if you can afford Microsoft Server licenses and SQL licenses and everything, hey, it's open source. Now, that worked really good, and everything got customized. As it got put in there, the developer would respond to the various needs. But this lead developer left us in 2015, and I came in 2016. So I was left with the legacy system. The part of what this digital library system is, it's not just for us. We also host the Digital Library of the Caribbean, which is a partnership of over 90 partners who restore materials from everywhere from very small Caribbean countries to, we have partners in Canada and Europe and things like that have collections, in this area. So we definitely have a system that's important. We get millions and millions of hits, all the time. It's being used. We can't take this system down to upgrade it. We've built in things like, even when we have now they have satellite photos, but back in the day, all the airplane aerial photos that they took over land, we have a whole Florida collection of that. And if our system goes down for even a few hours, we have the Department of Transportation phoning us from the state saying, the system's down. I need those 1950s because they're doing road planning. Satellites don't go back that far, but we do. So all this customization we did, critical system is, what got us to where we are today. But it's important. Our dean has been very, if any of you know, if you have other deans in the room, you might know my dean. She's what she wants, she gets. Needless to say, the system, we built it. It has over 18 million content pages. So I won't say items, we're probably around 1.5 to 2 million items in the system, but actually pages of content. So, an audio file versus a couple PDFs, they're all kind of file counts. But we do everything in the system. We don't have a different IR. We don't have a different, anything. It's all in one big system. Video, the various content types, 3D scanning was talked about. Yeah, we have, photogrammetry files. Let's put those in. And so we have to figure out how to do that and have a viewer for it. So we do it all. But we were left with an outdated interface. It wasn't mobile responsive. We had search enhancements that needed to be done. We had a backlog of programming requests that needed to be done. It was hard to maintain. It was hard to maintain for a few things, especially given the fact that the lead developer left. We had some everyone that came in had to learn the system. Well, guess what? When you have a developer that develops their own system, even though they say, yeah, you can get at the code and look at it, no one documents well. So guess what? Pretty much, it was nearly impossible to make changes on this system. Not only that, it is the back-end system as well as the front-end system. So this is our production system. This is what our digital support services run. They use this to digitize, they use this to ingest the materials, but it also was the public interface. So guess what? When one part of the system broke, the whole system broke. So not only was it down for the public, it was down for production. And so that was a challenge. The other challenge, and some of you, I'm lucky, I have a dean who gives money towards me and says, don't just cut staff and buy something off the shelf, especially when he told them, well, we'd have to split this into about 4 different systems to even come close to what we're doing. And she said, okay, well, I'll make sure you have staffing funding. Well, guess what? Developers are not easy to keep. And developers that know any sort of like old Windows code is not easy to find either. So we're left, this is I keep this going just because it's entertaining to me. And since I started back in 2016, which has already dropped off the list, I've hardly ever been at a time where I'm not searching for a developer. But we did make, this actually was one of the reasons we made the choice we did. We decided we're going to do it. We're going to actually do it in-house again, but we're going to sort of piecemeal it. The plane has to keep flying, and we have to build a new system as we go. So we decided, let's just tackle the front end. We could do a cutoff point. We can move it over to the front end. The production can still keep going on the old system, and we can move forward. But I was always onboarding and searching for developers. But the developers and what their abilities are, one, they don't know the old types of Windows programming and coding, and they also don't know libraries. So many of our systems were built by people who have a library knowledge, so they architected them in a certain way. So when we actually COVID was a blessing a little bit because we built a whole new team totally remote. Although they all lived in town, they were all remote. And we had a whole new programming team that came in. They had new skill sets. And I said, okay, you have expertise building big datas. They came from some companies that actually they worked with databases, and they looked at this and said, well, I think we can do this better. I think we can just use what we know and build you a library front end. And so that's what they did. We spent a year back in 2020, 2021 into 22, we said, okay, let's do this. And at that point, I told the production staff, okay, what you got for the old system is what you got. You can't bug us anymore. Because every time they would have a problem that needed to be fixed, the development time for doing the new got focused on doing the old and fixing the old. So we defined a minimum set of viable product. So for the initial release, we decided we were going to continue to use the back end as our production system. So we continue to do that today, actually. And then so we were going to put these, and then port it into a new system. It's a Linux architecture, Postgres, database, Elasticsearch, Nginx front end. This is what our developers knew. It's robust. It's worked. We've actually hired new developers since then. They can hit the road running because they know this. So basically, we just decided to do that, start building it back. And we were actually within a year, we were able to roll out the front end. But this is all API driven now. The front end is totally disconnected from the back end. We can keep things going. Also with our new architecture built on our new, like the campus infrastructure that we do, we have a total redundancy, failover. One data center can go down, we'll roll over to the next. That just wasn't very easy to do with the old system. So we rolled this out. We've had it up for a number of years now. We've made incredible changes, like rapidly being able to respond with this new architecture that even surprises me. 3 weeks ago, we had a request because we do closed captioning with video files, and we actually read along, it highlights as it goes down the transcript on the side as well, not just the closed captioning on top. And someone came saying, well, we have transcripts, we have some VTT files of just audio files now. Can we just put that in? And we're like, okay. And within 2 days, we had that up on the production system. So the developers are really able to respond given the time they're able to respond. We also gave us the ability to put a new portal on, not just for the Digital Library of the Caribbean and our main UFDC, as we call it, but we were able to put in a Florida Digital Newspaper portal that just brings together all of our newspapers. And so now I'll get to the real question. Was it the right direction? We still have the old system in place. That's the next steps. We're looking at tool by tool as we rebuild this, but we're also looking around at what the current marketplace is. I've had some experiences with losing control of things that are hosted external that weren't pretty. So I tend to be one that I have the money, I have the resource, I have the support from leadership. I love to keep things as close as I can. I'm worried about losing my content and losing the control of the system. So, but it provides a very flexible system. We can hire developers right off and they're able to respond and work with it. Disadvantages, I have no community. We have very little bits. We do work with the University of North Texas a bit because they have sort of stood up their own system like we did for Florida or for Texas. But we're responsible for but it's only as good as our developers are too. Luckily, I'm able to hold on to some good ones and keep it going. And I would say when it really boils down to it, given the money, given my support, this is the way I would go. I would go this way. Most places don't have that resources. So from a dissertation a few years ago, I really found out what impacts leadership's decisions when supporting library technologies. It comes down to, well, besides, is there a real good user need for it, but do we have the money to do it? And that it's all about funding. So is this the right decision? I'd say at this point, yes. Ask me in 2 years. I look around the market. I just met with the TIN folks, anyone using TIN, looking at their architecture because they're coming along. Met with them a couple of weeks ago to look at their systems, especially as we look at the back end processes. So, but that's sort of the next steps. We're looking at this. We're looking online tool sets in our back end productions, pulling them out of the Windows environment one by one and moving that along. And I think it's been an interesting experience. And I think I do have 1 minute left, so I'll tell a little bit of a story. I talk about losing control. We had a Florida digital newspaper, or Florida digital archive, a dark archive that the state set up for us years ago. And we had been housing master copies in this dark archive in our data centers and in the Stark archive for a number of years. We had over 200 terabytes of master files in this. We also had backups on tape, but we really didn't know if they were parallel because this has been going on for decades now. And all of a sudden, it was August of 1 year, and the next, they said by July 1st next year, we're turning this off. Oh, great, a dark archive. Is that really great? They're turning this off in less than a year. We're already into the budget cycle. I couldn't ask for more money. And luckily, we were able to respond to that. But that's because I do have the support of leadership in this area. And this is important to keep these digital digital assets important. But we had to figure out how to transfer 200 terabytes of material back to us. They couldn't do it even online. We tried it. They actually had to put disks in this data center, load it all up, truck it to us, put it in our data center. Well, not our data center, campus data center. And if any of you have worked with your campus IT, trying to get them to do anything in their data center, but trying to convince them to take a rack of someone else's stuff and put it in their rack for a few months to transfer stuff is not an easy thing. So this is my tendency. I tend to like to control stuff if we can on-house. I really do worry about some of our technical debt that we built up, or even some of these other things now, though, about how we host things offsite. When someone says, I'm turning this off, do we have the resources to actually pull it back or adapt it into something new? So I think it's a question. In the end, so far, it's worth it for me to do my own digital system. Well, yeah, ask me in a couple of years. Questions?
Thank you, Todd. Are there any questions?
CMS. So I have two questions in the comment. So is it the case that the Solix CM is still running in parallel with what you built?
Yes. We actually have it running. We still use it to ingest materials. We put it through the builder. It makes derivatives and things like that for us. There's so many other components. We use LIM for processing as well to put through. We use AbiFind for OCRing in that system. So there's multiple components, but ultimately it goes into our SOBEC system, and then we feed out into our Postgres and index the new METS files and things like that. But we are looking to turn it on. One of the things I worry about is as the version that it was built for in Windows ages, will it work when we have to do a server upgrade of that Windows system? And the fact that I have no one to fix it. And I also know that campus one day will turn probably public outside of the university access off to this system because of security concerns.
And then my follow-up is, I am not in the Sunbear community, but you've described a problem that community attempts to solve. We do not use any of the bits of Sunbear, but we are part of the community, and they think about the same problems that you're thinking about. So you don't need to do this alone. They have different stacks, and we certainly have a different stack from the Sunbear community. When you're thinking about digitization, it is a really useful resource in terms of, I do think you are doing the right thing. And you can have peers who may not be using the same stack as you're using, but the questions that they ask are going to be similar to yours. It'll reinforce that you did do the right thing because you'll solve it locally with educated guests from peers.
Yes. Well, that's really great. Yeah. And I do think there's some really good communities out there that we have these questions. I know I'm do some work with the Digital Library Federation and some other partners as well. And these questions do come up about, all the time from peers. And I don't think there's an easy answer here. I think as libraries, we've built technologies over like the last 30 years. And we had at the table, at the end of the thing, we don't plan. We don't say, we don't do any kind of even mid or long-term planning for systems. We build stuff and then we beg for money every year to keep them going. But how's it built into that idea that we're in this for the long game, especially when we talk about things like digital preservation? What does that mean? What does preservation mean digitally if someone can say, I'm turning your server off?
Are there any other questions? We might have time for one more question.
Do you guys use any open data standards like IIIF? And that way you can develop your own software, but you have a community to talk to who develops based on that data standard and also some software to use.
Yeah, we do use, even though we built it ourselves with that, we are implementing, like we use standard METS files, things like that. We have standards we build around. We actually probably be turning on our universal viewer fairly soon for IIIF, part because we didn't have manifest files for METS files, and we're starting to get more in that do. So for those that know, but we'll be probably using universal viewer in the near future for some of that. So we're building the plugins, the tools, the standards, we're using those. It's just how it's architected, and some of the things like using Elasticsearch and using some of how that responds, and building, how we generate our API and what fields we need to pass back and forth. We built an OMI, you can come to our system and actually suck our records out through OMI PMH. So we build upon standards, but not necessarily. People can come in, they still have to learn that. That's the problem. It took one developer, he was doing some programming. It took him about 3 months of just research to understand the standards to implement it. But I don't have to worry about teaching them how to implement it. They just need to know what they're doing.
I think that's a perfect approach.
Maybe one more question?
If you need easy links. And contact me anytime, and I love to have conversations about anything. So
Thank you, Todd. Just a quick question regarding technical debt. You mentioned that one, I think maybe once or twice in your presentation. Maybe for some of us who are not familiar with that term, could you maybe explain a little bit more? And in terms of how you approach dealing with it, I know for our library, it's about trying to make time to deal with that debt. And sometimes that's not always easy when management and leadership want you to just move forward with the next project and the next project.
So for technical debt, I might have some of there's a few various definitions of how it's being used, but in my mind, what we're dealing is we're building systems and knowing that we're accumulating things that need to be fixed in the future and adjusted and changed in the future. And having that ability for us to respond to that debt as we do more it's hard to do. And so how do we handle taking care of that debt, reducing that technical debt, the technology debt that happens? Because a lot of our systems, even technical debt, there's the idea that you're building a system with the total knowledge that you're not thinking about the future, you're just responding to the now. And we've done a lot of that with building library systems, responding for how do we deal with this now, not what does this mean 5 years from now? So, yeah.